Looking ahead to President Trump's 100th day in office tomorrow, President Trump will sit down with CBS News chief Washington correspondent and Face the Nation anchor John Dickerson for an exclusive interview tomorrow. And John Dickerson joins us live right now. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Christy.
So what can we expect from your interview this weekend?
Well, hopefully we can expect a different insight into President Trump, how he's evaluated the first 100 days, what he takes away from it. You know, not so much totaling up his successes and failures, but what has he learned and how's he going to take that and use it going forward in his presidency? And also, how does he read the world that he faces, that it's a very complicated and tricky world, most notably, of course, with North Korea. So we're hoping to have a conversation and less a debate about successes and failures to try to get the president to really give us a sense of how he approaches this job at this important milestone.
Now, we know that Congress passed a short-term spending bill to avoid a government shutdown at midnight tonight. So if that didn't happen, what would it have meant for the president to have the government shut down on his 100th day?
Well, it would have been a bit of a black eye for the president. I mean, the Republicans do control the White House and the House and the Senate, and keeping the government open is sort of the basic level of competency. And so they've avoided that. There are a lot of fights going on, so using a government shutdown, which would have not had a huge practical effect over, you know, if it had been just a few days, but nevertheless would have been symbolically bad. Having a big fight over whatever the fight would have been about, whenever you have a shutdown, it's about a specific thing, is probably something they decided they didn't want, because there are a lot of contentious items anyway, including the inability of Republicans to kind of come to a common view about how to replace the Affordable Care Act. So it just would have added more chaos into a system that's already pretty chaotic.
And in your opinion, I guess, what is your analysis of the president's first 100 days?
Well, to analyze the first 100 days, you have to kind of chop it into its component parts. There are some parts of his first 100 days that are much more longer term and therefore don't get as much scrutiny as, say, legislation does, but that is quite important. Obviously, the Supreme Court pick is the first of that. That's a possibly history-making decision, in the sense that decisions that Neil Gorsuch will render as a member of the court will change American lives, and potentially for generations or forever. And so that's a big, heavy, weighty decision the president made, and somebody got through the nomination process. And so that's a big deal. He's also named a lot of people to these agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Justice, people who have very aggressive views about how to roll back the Obama administration rules, who want to roll back regulations, who want to change the direction of the federal government. And they are doing so and will keep doing so. And those are also accomplishments. Obviously, on the legislative front, he has not been able to get a successful piece of legislation through. That's in part because of the way they've chosen to do so, through a purely partisan approach when it comes to health care. It's also because the president, turns out, is not negotiating with Congress, is not like negotiating in the private sector. So on the legislative front, things are not looking as well, not looking as good for the president. And obviously, his approval ratings are not very good, and that's not good for a president either. So it's a mixed bag for the president at his first 100-day mark.
All right, John, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we look forward to watching your interview this Sunday on Face the Nation.